Chapter 1: The Quiet House. John grew up in a home of constant shouting. His parents' arguments were the background noise of his life, a storm of blame and slammed doors. His defense was detachment. He perfected a cool, distant demeanor, his only desire a simple, impossible quiet. He became an observer in his own life, an average kid who just wanted peace. Then, one ordinary Tuesday, he came home to a different kind of quiet. It wasn't peaceful. It was hollow, absolute. A note from a neighbor led to a phone call. His parents had been in a car accident. They were gone. The shouting was over, replaced by a silence so profound it broke him for a time. But people recover, or learn to. He moved into a small, plain apartment, found a regular office job processing data, and tried to build a normal, quiet life. On his 20th birthday, he discovered his girlfriend was cheating on him. He felt no fiery rage, only a cold, weary recognition. He didn't yell or fight. He ended it cleanly, decisively. He refused a life of noise and betrayal, ending in that terrible final silence. He went home, seeking the comfort of his own, predictable space. He took a cold beer from the fridge, popped the cap, and took a long sip. Leaning against the kitchen counter, he replayed the bland misery of the day in his head, his hand squeezing the bottle absently. Then poof. It just disappeared. The bottle was gone from his hand. John stood frozen, shocked. He'd just had it. His first, logical thought was a prank, a hidden camera, a friend in the closet. He searched the small apartment with methodical urgency, checking behind furniture, in the shower. He was alone. He opened the fridge. The 6-pack was now a 5-pack. The space where his bottle had been was empty. But he could still taste the beer on his tongue. So, not a hallucination. Heartbeat thudding in his ears, he took out a can of soda. He stood in the same spot, deliberately recreated the same train of thought, and squeezed the can. Poof. He watched it happen this time. The can vanished from his grip between one instant and the next, leaving nothing, not even a fizz in the air. Something had changed. After an hour of silent, frantic experimentation, he mapped the basics. He could will small, inanimate objects away, a pen, a book, his TV remote. A focused thought would bring them back, appearing in his hand or on the table with a soft shump of displaced air. Then came the big test. Standing in the center of his living room, he focused on himself. Go where the things go. The world dissolved into a grayish-white blur, and he stumbled onto a smooth, cool, featureless floor. Chapter 2: The White Room. He stood in a vast, silent, illuminated expanse. The air was still, temperature neutral, utterly odorless. Above was a smooth, seamless ceiling glowing with a soft, sourceless light. He explored, finding the limits. It was a perfect rectangle, roughly the size of a football field, with a ceiling about as high as a 3-story building. A sterile, private warehouse. In one corner sat his lonely experiments, the beer bottle, soda can, pen. Exiting was as simple as willing it. He reappeared precisely in his living room. The implications landed with the weight of a planet. A secret, personal pocket dimension. Then, the immediate, ice-cold corollary, and if anyone finds out, they will dissect me to figure out why. A primal chill, deeper than any from his childhood, shot down his spine. He spent the next 2 hours in a meticulous ritual of security, unplugging the Wi-Fi router, draping blankets over windows, stuffing towels under doors, covering his laptop camera and smartphone lens with tape. Paranoia? Perhaps. But in his new reality, paranoia was just another word for survival. He spent the rest of the night experimenting. He confirmed a perfect stasis field. Ice cubes didn't melt. A cup of tea, sent in steaming, returned piping hot. Food probably won't spoil, he thought, but I need to be sure. He was mentally buzzing, eager to continue, but physical exhaustion dragged at him. He had work in the morning. Reluctantly, he went to sleep, his dreams filled with silent, white spaces. Chapter 3: The Double Life. The next day at the office, John was a model of normalcy, quiet, efficient, unremarkable. Inside, his mind was a roaring engine, fixed solely on getting home. After work, he went to the supermarket. He filled his cart with vegetables, fresh meat, dairy, items that would spoil quickly. He mixed in ordinary pantry staples to make the trip look routine. Back home, after reactivating his security ritual, he sent all the perishables directly into the White Room. He cooked a simple pasta dinner, ate a bowl, and stored the rest of the pot in the space. A 2-week experiment began. He refined his understanding of the rules. His entry and exit point was fixed, an immutable anchor in reality. He learned he could move items in and out without physically entering himself, a telekinetic-like command. Most crucially, when he was inside the White Room, he could maintain a vague, almost psychic awareness of the area around his exit point, a fuzzy sphere of perception about 30 feet across. It was like watching a blurry security monitor. It wouldn't show details, but it would warn him of large movement, like a person walking past his apartment door. It meant he wouldn't blindly materialize in front of someone. The living test was sobering. He caught a fly in a glass. The moment it entered the White Room, it dropped, lifeless. He tried with a spider, a moth. Same result. The space was inhospitable to life. A deep unease settled in him. What would happen to a person? The potential answers, a corpse to hide or a witness to manage, were both catastrophic. He made a firm, unwavering rule: never with people. For 2 weeks, John lived his dual existence. By day, a data entry clerk. By night, a researcher of the impossible. He fantasized about building a real shelter in that void, a private retreat. A garden was a fleeting thought, quickly dismissed. Plants were living things. When the 2 weeks were up, he retrieved the pasta. It was perfectly fresh, as if he'd just taken it off the stove. The broccoli was still crisp, the chicken still tender. A slow smile spread across his face. Perfect stasis. He returned it all to a designated corner of the White Room, a long-term sample. Chapter 4: The Builder. The dream solidified, a true refuge. A home that could never be burgled, never be repossessed, never echo with anyone's voice but his own. A place of permanent, chosen quiet. The obstacle was logistical. How does one man buy enough lumber, cement, wiring, and plumbing to build a house without raising every red flag imaginable? His initial idea seemed outlandish: go to a foreign country, use untraceable cash, buy everything, and vanish it. The more he pondered, the more it shifted from trouble to elegant solution. It was anonymity, packaged. John began his financial reshuffle. He withdrew his savings in small, unremarkable amounts, storing the growing piles of cash in the White Room. To explain the dwindling bank balance, he crafted a flimsy cover: occasional, modest trips to a local casino. He'd go, play a few hands of blackjack or slots, never win big, and leave. It made him look like a man with a harmless, unlucky habit. After a month, he requested a month's leave from work, citing personal travel. He flew to a country with a bustling gray market and lax oversight. He dressed in generic clothes, wore a baseball cap, and used thick wads of cash to rent 2 isolated warehouses under pseudonyms. Then, the hoarding began. Bricks, lumber, bags of concrete mix, PVC pipes, spools of wire, boxes of nails and screws. He also bought pallets of canned goods, tools, cases of water, batteries, blankets. Filling the vastness of the White Room was a new obsession. In a shadowy corner of the black market, he traded cash for a few handguns, rifles, and ammunition. He didn't know how to use them, but the thought of having them was compelling. He bought them just because he could, a fact he privately found darkly amusing. His tradecraft was simple but effective: cash only, move under cover of darkness, never show his face clearly. Soon, his money was gone. He was, after all, just a regular worker. He spent his remaining days as a tourist, then flew home. Back to the office grind, his mind was elsewhere. He used his next paychecks to enroll in firearm safety and training courses, learning to handle his purchases with respect. He devoured books and online tutorials on carpentry, plumbing, and basic electrical work. He had time. Over the next several months, in the evenings and on weekends, John became a builder. Inside the boundless white void, a structure slowly took form: a modest, sturdy 2-bedroom house. Each bedroom had its own small bathroom. There was a kitchen, a living area, a study. The physical labor was exhausting: muscles ached, hands grew calloused, but he saw his body change, grow stronger. Finally, the shell was complete. After saving diligently again, he took another vacation. This trip was for finishing touches, furniture, appliances, rugs, curtains. In another dark market encounter, he found and purchased 2 sleek combat suits, one in stark black, one in brilliant snow white. They looked like something from a sci-fi movie. Impulse took over. He bought them, along with more survival gear. It emptied his funds once more. John finished his trip with some sightseeing, then returned home, a man with a fully furnished secret home and an empty wallet. Chapter 5: A Normal Life, Almost. John decided he had to stop. The frantic hoarding, the secret flights, the constant feeling of preparing for an unseen disaster, it wasn't healthy. He was behaving like it was the end of the world. Over the next few months, after his 21st birthday, John consciously tried to be normal. He saved his money instead of spending it on another warehouse raid. He practiced his ability in small, private ways that brought him simple joy. While holding his morning coffee mug at his desk, he'd use his mind to swap the lukewarm office brew for a perfectly hot, fresh cup from the Stasis stash in his white room. The secret thrill of it never got old. He even started dating again. Sarah, from the marketing department, was pleasant and pretty. They went for coffee, saw movies. It wasn't a deep connection, and there was a quiet understanding that they weren't quite right for each other, but it was normal. It was a routine until they eventually separated peacefully. John's life went back to normal for the most part. Outside of his own secret, the first strange thing happened at work. A colleague from accounting, Kyle, was dozing at his desk. He jolted awake with a gasp, a look of pure, unvarnished horror on his face. He stared blankly for a moment, fumbled for his phone, looked at the date, and muttered under his breath, "I've been reborn." John, passing by to refill his now secretly excellent coffee, heard it. He paused, then shrugged. Weird, he thought, and filed it away as stress or a bad dream. The next day, he heard Kyle had quit very suddenly. John brushed it aside. People cracked under pressure all the time. A week later, he saw Kyle again. From across the street, he spotted him coming out of a supermarket, his arms loaded with bags, canned goods, sacks of rice, bottled water. That in itself wasn't odd. But it was Kyle's demeanor. He wasn't shopping. He was frantically acquiring, his head on a swivel, his movements jerky with panic. It caught John's eye for a moment before the crowd swallowed him up. The second incident was closer to home. Leaving work one evening, John saw Sarah getting into her car. As she pulled out of the parking lot, she suddenly clutched her head with both hands, swerving violently and nearly side-swiping a delivery van. John rushed over as she slammed the car into park, engine still running. She was bent over the wheel, breathing hard. "Sarah. Are you okay?" John asked, tapping on the window. She rolled the window down, the pain in her eyes seeming to recede, replaced by a deep, bewildering confusion. She stared at him, and then a strange, weary smile touched her lips. "Oh. John. Long time no see. Which base is this?" John blinked. "Base. Sarah, you're still at work." "The office." Her brow furrowed. "Work. Didn't the building." Her words trailed off as her gaze swept over the familiar office park, the manicured shrubs, the ordinary sky. The reality of it seemed to crash into her. She stopped, her face going carefully blank. I'm fine. Just a migraine." She apologized to the startled van driver, rolled up her window, and drove away, leaving John standing on the curb. The next day, an email announced Sarah had resigned, effective immediately. Now John was unsettled. Reborn. Which base? Didn't the building? Two people, both acting like they'd woken up in the wrong life. The third incident sealed it. That weekend, walking through the park to clear his head, he saw a man with his young daughter. The father stopped dead, his hand going to his temple. He looked around with the same blank, terrifying confusion. Then he looked down at his little girl, his eyes widening with a grief so raw it was painful to witness. "Katie. You're really alive." His voice was a broken whisper. Then he dropped to his knees, hugging her tightly as sobs racked his body. The little girl, confused, patted his back. John watched, frozen. Then the man's grief seemed to ignite into desperate energy. He stood, sweeping his daughter into his arms. "We need to find your mom," he said, his voice thick but urgent. "Now. Before it's too late." And he ran, disappearing into the park's pathways with a speed born of pure fear. John stood alone on the path. The pieces, nonsensical as they were, clicked together in his mind with a cold, dreadful certainty. Something is coming. Something so bad that people were remembering it. Dreaming of it. He didn't have the words, but the pattern was undeniable. He tried calling Sarah. Her phone was disconnected. He had no idea where Kyle lived. A search of the news showed nothing but the usual chaos of the world, no looming asteroid, no word of a pandemic. But he trusted the fear he'd seen in their eyes. It was the same instinct that had made him cover his webcam. Something was wrong. He didn't know what, but he wasn't going to be caught in the open. Chapter 6, The Final Preparation. John didn't panic. He planned. He wasn't preparing for a specific disaster, flood, war, drought, but for the unknown. For the collapse those people seemed to remember. He rented a hotel room on a high floor in the city center, paying for a month in cash under a vague alias. It was a vantage point. Next, he rented 2 large storage units on the far outskirts of the city, again with cash. Then, he spent. He visited hardware stores, outdoor survival shops, and medical supply outlets in different towns. He bought with a focused intensity: heavy-duty water filters and collapsible barrels, industrial rolls of plastic sheeting and duct tape, compact solar panels and large battery banks, extreme cold weather gear and portable heaters. He bought bulk antibiotics, painkillers, sutures, and antiseptics from different pharmacies. During his earlier preparations in building his house inside the space, John had studied a bit of basic medicine and bought a few supplies, just in case he was drugged or needed to treat himself. This time, he doubled down on what he had, buying all sorts of different medical items. From earlier on, in his first experiments, he had ordered more takeout just for the purpose of storing, so he already had a lot of ready-cooked, delicious food. But just to be extra sure, John arranged for a massive spread of gourmet dishes to be delivered to a section of one warehouse, enough to satisfy 500 people. The sight of the towering stacks of containers was surreal. He didn't buy guns. He already had those, locked in stasis. He bought seeds, thinking maybe, just maybe, if things were truly long-term. Under the cover of darkness, John would visit the storage units. With a wave of silent concentration, the entire contents would vanish into the white room. He left the units empty. He had paid in full and in cash, so the owners had no financial reason to care what happened to the items inside, and even if they did, John had covered his tracks well. None of the people involved had gotten a clear look at his face or knew his real name. He'd used a generic, muffled voice when speaking to anyone, a simple disguise of posture and tone. There was nothing to trace back to him, especially since he lived miles away from the warehouses. To the few who had interacted with him, John was just a muffled voice and a hand passing over thick envelopes of cash. The warehouse owner was away and didn't know what John had stored. John just told him he could have the warehouses back the next day. John came and went like a ghost, timing his arrivals and departures for the deepest hours of the night. He ensured no one saw him enter or exit, scouting the perimeter first to confirm he was alone. He had chosen these warehouses specifically for their lack of functional security cameras, but as an extra precaution, he moved only in the blind spots between any distant streetlights, a shadow among shadows. Nothing recorded his passage, and nothing living witnessed the tons of supplies that simply ceased to exist. The morning after his final procurement run, he went to work. He needed the paycheck, and a part of him needed to see if the world was still spinning normally. He was calm on the outside, a model of composed routine. Inside, every nerve was a tripwire. The clock hit 5 p.m. As he stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of the office, gathering his things, he saw it in the distance. A military helicopter, a tiny speck against the gray sky. It wasn't flying smoothly. It wobbled, spun in a lazy, wrong circle, and then, like a stone, dropped behind the skyline. A second later, a distant, muffled crump echoed, followed by a bloom of black smoke. No more signs were needed. He didn't run. He walked swiftly to the elevator, rode it down with a handful of other oblivious coworkers, and got into his car. His plan was to drive to the hotel, hole up, and assess. But the city had other plans. Traffic was a gridlocked, honking nightmare. He inched forward through the honking gridlock and turned on the radio, scanning. Most stations were static or playing oblivious music. One crackled with an emergency broadcast tone. Multiple reports of violent disturbances. Authorities advise citizens to shelter in place, lock all doors and windows. Then he heard it, the first screams. Far in the distance, back the way he had come, but unmistakable. Not the shout of a fender bender, but raw, animal terror, multiplying and spreading like a wave. His blood went cold. He pulled the car onto the curb, abandoning it. The moment his door opened, the full soundscape of the collapsing city hit him like a wall. Screams, shattering glass, crashing metal, distant alarms, and underneath it all, a new, chilling sound, a low, guttural snarling that seemed to come from no human throat. The sound was coming from the direction he had just fled. John didn't plan to figure out what it was. He just started sprinting toward the hotel he'd booked, and the chaotic sounds only grew louder behind him. After running for several blocks, he passed an ambulance that had crashed into a bus stop. The driver was staggering out, clutching a horrific bite on his neck, blood pulsing between his fingers. The back doors burst open and a paramedic fell out, her body convulsing in a way that was not human. She twitched, then stood with jerky, unnatural movements. John didn't wait to see more. He was a blur, fueled by primal fear and years of secret preparation. He reached the hotel, flew up the fire stairs in record time, and barricaded himself in room 407. Only when the dresser was against the door and the blackout curtains were drawn did he let himself breathe. He was safe. For now. He had a fortress no disaster could reach. But as he listened to the world fall apart outside, he knew his long, quiet preparation had paid off. The unknown had arrived. And he was, perhaps, the only man on Earth who was truly ready for it.